Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Tantra's Mantra where we go behind and beyond the tech news headlines. I'm your host Prakash Sangam, founder and principal at Tantra Analyst. Today we will take a deeper dive into the AR, VR, XR, MR industry and take your pick. I'll stick to XR during this discussion as a name. We'll specifically talk about the effect of announcement of Apple's Vision Pro headset. Although the announcement was anticipated for a long time, specifics of the device totally changed the dynamics. There are many surprises as well. Many existing players welcomed Apple's entry. Some others thumped their chest saying this validated their position and they are already ahead of the curve and ahead of Apple because they've been in this market for some time. Of course, anything Apple does attracts a lot of attention and a lot of media coverage and so on, and everybody has an opinion on Apple. So if you ask five people, you get six opinions, right? So we want to take a little bit of a structured approach to our discussion. We'll talk how about the product itself, how this impacts Apple, but more importantly, how it affects and changes the XR industry as a whole. To do that, we have a good friend and a fellow analyst, Leonard Lee of NextCurve, with us today. Leonard, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Prakash. I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be fun.
Perfect. It's the first time we have Leonard on the show. I hope we'll keep coming back, Leonard. There are a lot of things that we discuss offline, and it's about time that we do them online and make our opinions heard, right?
I have to agree with you. So, and I look forward to future discussions on other pivotal topics. So,
Perfect. So, why don't you give our listeners a quick background on yourself and what NextCurve is doing and in what areas it is doing work?
yeah, that's a really interesting question. So, yeah, I'm the executive analyst and founder of NextCurve. I founded the firm 5 years ago, and previously I was a managing partner with Gartner, and then I had 25 years in consulting with IBM, PwC, and so forth. And a lot of what NextCurve is about is looking at forward-looking topics and the broader tech industry, and a lot of what we try to do is literally figure out what the next curve is. And so I'll leave it at that. One of the things that I know that you and I do is oftentimes bump into each other in a lot of these tech conferences. And so in many ways, I mirror what you do, Prakash, at Tantra Analyst. So
Very well. So let's get started with the questions and the discussion. So, what is your initial view of Vision Pro, about the product itself and what it has done?
yeah, I mean, I generally thought that it was a cool looking device and kind of goofy at the same time. I mean, I have mixed feelings about these MR or mixed reality glasses. And, I think one of the reasons why it looks like a pair of goggles is because it really is sort of a VR ish kind of device with a pass through feature where you can see your environment but also integrate your environment into whatever experiences that you're rendering through the device. But at the same time, I thought it was also unremarkable. My initial impression was I was a little bit disappointed, quite honestly.
Mhm. Why is that?
Well, I didn't think that this was the direction that Apple was going to go. I honestly thought that they would be coming to market with something that was a little bit more in line with AR glasses, which would have been technically a more challenging thing, which is one of the reasons why I didn't quite expect them to deliver on what I thought were rumors. But my initial impression was, where are they trying to go with this thing?
Okay. I have a little bit of a different view on this. Tim Cook called it a AR headset when he introduced it, but it is indeed a mixed reality or extended reality, what you want to call it. It is a remarkable device in my view because of all the technology and the stuff inside in it. The question is whether all of that is required or not. I'll say this: if you used a VR or AR MR headset, you always think that there is something is missing. Either the quality is not there, and a lot of times content is not appropriate, and you always keep asking what is the use case, how people make money with this, and so on. So there, I think the announcement gave an answer to a lot of those questions. We'll see how it goes. Did you have anything surprising in the announcement? Anything that you expected and not expected?
Yeah, going back to what I said before, the fact that the rumors are actually true this time, right? Because people have been prognosticating that Apple would
Mhm.
put out some kind of quote unquote AR device for a long time. So that was a little bit of a surprise, you know. And again, going back to some of the device itself, you and I, we talk to a lot of technology companies, right? And we're not unfamiliar with the XR world and the available tech that can go into devices.
Mhm.
And so when I saw the unveiling, my first impression was, hey, look, we've already seen this kind of stuff before, right? And we've also seen that it hasn't made traction. And I didn't see really where Vision Pro was solving any of these big problems that have stymied the XR movement.
Mhm.
What we've seen is a pretty big pivot toward enterprise, whether it's AR or XR. But even then, whatever success has been realized has been slow moving. It certainly hasn't been on the scale of what many analysts have been forecasting or anticipating. I didn't think that Apple really had a game changing
Mhm.
offering. Again, first impressions, right?
Correct. Yeah. What I found interesting
Mhm.
is that they did not, start talking about all these. Obviously, metaverse is, nobody nobody believes it will happen in, if it ever soon.
Yeah.
But all these hyperbole use cases, right? That you'll wear it everywhere, walk around with the glass on you, and so on.
Yeah.
I think, as you pointed out, one, they had a very heavy enterprise focus. Probably because of the price. We'll talk about that in a little while.
Yeah.
And also, they had simple use cases like replacing your TV. I mean, I don't think anybody will replace the TV,
Yeah.
but making it more of a content consumption device, videos, and other things. Highlight a specific use case that users or buyer can right away start using the device for not wait for something to happen in the
Mhm.
overall industry and so on.
Mhm.
And to add to that, they started talking about the content. They had
Yeah.
Disney CEO and announcing they'll work with and so on. So, and there is at least a year or more
Yeah.
before it is shipped and people get it.
Yeah.
So there is enough time that
Yeah.
the content can be developed even just for viewing. So I think the two
Right.
things that they focused, which
Yeah.
I think made sense compared to others.
Yeah, and I mean, I even struggle with those a little bit
Uh-huh.
because headsets are, yes, Apple tethered the battery and took the weight out of the headset,
Hmm.
but even then, I mean, if anyone's gone skiing, you know that those goggles have gotten really light, but it becomes uncomfortable wearing those things after maybe 2 hours max, right? You got to take them off.
Correct.
I think just having goggles that form factor, okay, the goggle form factor is just going to be burdensome at some point where the user is going to say, look, this
Hmm.
is getting uncomfortable. So for those more, let's say, longer duration use cases, I think there's still going to be that challenge. But obviously, I haven't actually tried these things on. Some folks have tried it on, but not for more than like 30 minutes or 45 minutes. So, for the more long duration applications, it's really, I think the jury is still out. I mean, these things need to go out into the market. People need to use them for us to get a sense of how long people are going to tolerate having these goggles on. But, going back to like the things that kind of surprised me that I thought were more of the factors that were game changing, I thought was this 3D spatial camera.
Hmm.
That is really interesting. Initially, I'm kind of scratching my head because when they showed the video, demo,
Hmm.
it just looked really strange, right? Having the father staring through these goggles and looking at their kids and taking photos and stuff. I just went, wow, that just looks really goofy.
Yeah.
Can't imagine anyone romping around in a party with these things on, taking photos. But one of the things that Apple always talks about is how these devices are the most personal things that you have in your digital life or even in your regular life, right? Your digitally augmented life.
Correct.
And, being able to capture volumetric content, I think is huge. And I say this because, there's this whole idea of like being photogenic, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
I think most of us are pretty photo inaccurate, right? And so when you try to experience people that oftentimes in two-dimensional media,
Mm-hmm.
you just don't get that experience, right? And I'm just really curious to see how well the 3D spatial camera works and if it can truly capture the essence of the moment in a volumetric way with spatial audio. I think that right there could be the killer application or the killer use case. Because the thing is, the content has always been a challenge, even with the announcements of Disney
Uh-huh.
and all of the properties that Apple actually has accumulated over the last decade, right? They have Apple TV Plus, they have Apple Music, and they have the podcast, they have all this media production capability and control where they can influence the production of content. I think even there, it's going to take a while for that immersive content, that volumetric content to really mature, right? That camera, man, I think it really has the potential to make this that kind of personal device where you're going to have some attachment to its utility and its value.
Yeah, true. Apple got a lot of flag because all the demos that they showed throughout the announcement, they showed very solitary life, right? Single people sitting on the sofa in a big home, or you're celebrating your kid's birthday just alone, and so on. It's
Yeah, it's really weird.
if you have to it, it's pretty sad, but yeah. The camera is pretty good, and content. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I think content is one of the key missing points in my view for XR. I
yeah,
like their point that they never said that you will have this on your head all the time and walking around and everything that a lot of XR
yeah,
proponents seem to
yeah,
think. That's not going to happen for a very long time, if at all. The use cases they talked about are for like content, how long
yeah,
you watch, right? For example, an hour or so, a movie or something like that, like you're having your personal IMAX, for example.
yeah,
And then for enterprise use cases, not all the time, but when you think you need multiple displays, like a dashboard or of sorts, you could basically use that, and so on, not as a 100% replacement for any of these devices.
right, right.
So that's interesting. So now the price tag 3,500. I mean, it was much higher than other people were expecting.
Mm,
Even people who know Apple very well, that
yeah,
the price is
yeah.
pretty steep compared to competition. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, given what they packed into the device and its capabilities that they tout, I mean, it sounds about right.
Correct. Yeah, the bomb itself, I think, pretty high.
Right, right.
So many sensor cameras, high definition displays, and so on.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you have the eye tracking sensors and I mean, there's a lot of technology that's packed into it. A lot of it is premium, very expensive to
Mm-hmm.
pack into a device like that. Obviously, the BOM costs are going to go up, and there's a premium that Apple is going to charge for that differentiated experience. Now, I mean, I don't think there has been really a disruptive product that hasn't come in at the premium price point. I mean, take smartphones, the original iPhone. It was
Mm-hmm.
really expensive. Everyone said no one's going to buy this thing.
Correct.
And yet over time, as the whole, I don't want to use the platform, but once the whole ecosystem kind of started to come together, that's where it really gained a lot of momentum. And you saw iPhone basically redefine the category. I mean, smartphones were there before,
Correct.
but it's the iPhone that changed the game at a premium. And even at that time, everybody was saying, hey, look, in order to make it in
Yeah.
create a breakthrough in this smartphone market, we need to go commodity cheap, cheap, cheap. That has always been the wrong answer.
Correct.
Tesla, same thing. They didn't start at the bottom of the
Yeah.
market trying to crank out Model 3s. They came in with Model S, and then went to Plaid before they went to the broader market with the Model 3 and the Y. So I don't have as much problem with the price point. I think it's about right, and it's still going to take time for legs to form underneath what I think Apple is doing. And I think the bigger picture is really more the important thing than the device itself.
And probably they intended this not to be a everybody in and everyday device, and
Yeah,
also make sure it goes to one.
yeah,
Their fanboys who are ready to pay any price and even line up even for this price outside the Apple stores when this releases.
mm,
And second, the app developers and others, so and keep kind of
yeah,
it is a close and smaller community before they fine tune and work out all the kinks and so on, right? So I think that is intentional as well.
yeah,
And I'm sure, I know, probably not soon, but they will tier because this is a mixed reality. And I see, and if you look at the use cases,
yeah.
they might tier up and tier down as well with
Mm.
functionalities and so on.
Well, yeah, it's a pro device, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's in the name.
Yeah, and then they really have the whole stack to accelerate, whether it's from the software standpoint, SDKs. They announced the Vision OS, but then on the content side, they have integrated tools. A lot of people don't know that they have a lot of media production tools. People know about GarageBand, but few people talk about Final Cut Pro.
Correct.
That's a pro quality software there that's used by a lot of studios in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And then on the music end, you have Logic Pro. And so for sound,
Mm-hmm.
even 3D titling and object creation, Apple has a lot of that. And it's all integrated. And even from the software for you talk about developers.
Correct.
I mean, it's almost like push button conversion. So if you have an existing, it doesn't take a lot of effort to actually create a Vision OS version of that same application.
Correct.
And so I think day one, Apple's going to have like a ton of applications for people to choose from. And it's interesting that they didn't take a game centric approach like everyone else has, right? I think they learned that gaming really isn't the killer application.
Correct. It's one segment of the market, and if they pushed it hard, I mean, they did talk about it,
Yeah.
not too much. I mean, otherwise people would
Yeah.
tag this as a gaming device. It's interesting, yeah. And I think the beauty that Apple brings that nobody can or able to match is
Yep.
full integration, right? Hardware, software,
Yep.
content, and
Exactly. Yep.
everything, and that gives them a huge edge that nobody else can replicate because everybody else have to rely on third parties to put this together. And if it is coming from multiple parties, integration is going to suffer and extremely hard to fight that off, as we're seeing in other areas, right? So
Yeah.
that is key. So
Yeah.
that's a good segue to our next section in terms of impact on the industry. So what do you think about when people are saying that it validates their position, the early entrants, and they're already ahead of Apple? I mean, to some extent validates, I agree with that, but I don't think
Mm.
others have a leg up because they started early. I think
Yeah.
Apple kind of changed the game altogether, right? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is all about the bigger picture, and like you said, and I have always said this
Mm-hmm.
for years. It's the device is not the problem; it's the content.
Correct.
The thing that everyone else has gotten wrong, I think, is the head fake that Apple did with XR or their XR play here, is that they went straight for the consumer. They're solving the content problem
Mm-hmm.
by enabling citizen creators, right? And this is what they do really, really well. Whereas everybody else was focused on the developer.
Mm-hmm.
And that ended up actually being the wrong answer. It's about enabling content creators like the guys in Hollywood who have been struggling with XR. So a lot of people think that, oh, hey, we give them the technology, we give them the device, and everyone's going to make like, VR movies, right? Not even close. Not even close. And, we have now a company, Apple, that has the breadth of portfolio where they can actually solve the big picture issues. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that puts them way ahead of everyone else because everyone else is focused on the device and it is not about the device. because anyone who spends 8 years and then is going to charge $3,500 for a headset can come up with a device very similar to what Apple's put together, right?
Correct.
But what they've done is they've designed out a lot of things because of the cost constraints and the price points that they
Yeah.
have been told is what is required in order to take XR mainstream, and that those hypotheses have been wrong. And I think Apple is proving that that will probably prove very likely that those theories have been wrong.
Yeah, I agree with it. It's kind of changed the game, and they've done something that nobody else can do, right? Because not one single company out there which has all these things: the hardware, the software, the content, and the app developer. It's all distributed. So
There's a couple. There's a couple. It's just that they've been focusing on gaming.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? But in a mainstream kind of market, there's nobody. You have to work with somebody.
Right.
You need hardware providers, chip providers. You need
Yeah.
software providers. You need developers. You need content, and it's all coming from different places, right? In most of the cases.
Yeah.
How do you think the existing players, especially like Meta, Microsoft, and others, will react to this? Will they stay the course or change the strategy?
You know what? I think it puts everybody in an uncomfortable position, as I mentioned before. I mean, we've seen a lot of the companies that we talk to in the XR space are trying to get into or in the XR game or trying to get in the XR space now pivot toward enterprise and industrial.
Hmm.
I think this puts them in an uncomfortable position of having to look back at the consumer,
Correct.
and the likely prospect that what Apple is going to do here is actually enable the mainstream, adoption or breakthrough of XR with the consumer, not with the enterprise, not with industrial. And I think that at the moment, given the prevailing thinking that's out there, that goes contrary to what people have been talking about over the last, I would say, year and a half.
Yeah, true. Especially after the metaverse hype has receded, people are thinking, okay, use cases are in business, and I agree.
Yeah.
There are lots of use cases in business, and then
So
for a lot of the business specific use cases, you may not need a 3500 Apple Vision Pro. There could be
yeah,
application specific devices as well.
yeah,
And even Apple also said basically they had two very key use cases. One is content consumption and the enterprise, and all others they brushed upon, but they focused on those two for a specific reason, and they focused them quite well there. And I think both of them make sense. And also, I agree that all the other players have to look for a consumer market because there will be content. So
yeah,
that I think in one way, others will definitely benefit that there'll be huge amount of content available. Probably initially it will be specific to Apple, and maybe that will spill over and others can get benefit on the other platforms. So that is one definitely good thing for the competition.
yeah,
Do you think they
yeah,
will attempt to replicate the 3000 dollar XR headset,
yeah,
try to compete with the Vision Pro
yeah.
head to head with exactly similar offering, or they look at other strategies?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really tough. I think there's going to be a lot of soul searching that's going to be required, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I think possibly for a lot of companies, the wrong move would be to emulate Apple just because they don't have the bits and pieces that Apple has to
Hmm.
number one justify that price point, because what people always buy into with Apple is much more than the device, right?
Yeah.
And if all you have is the device and not much more, you're going to find yourself in a pickle. I think one of the things that Apple is probably going to do is use or work with Disney on exclusive volumetric content, right? These very exclusive content that you can only get through Apple.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is going to be because the production processes and equipment and technologies are going to be exclusive to Apple, and the integration and all of this from, the set, right? In the studio set all the way to the device is going to be integrated with Apple stuff.
Hmm.
Distribution, Apple, so that's what's going to be really tough. And so a lot of the players out there, I think you have to really, really think hard about what is a competitive play, and maybe possibly even focusing in a different direction.
A lot of times, I mean, even when you look at the phone reviews and such,
Yeah.
people always compare features and spec and fail to realize that Apple doesn't sell device based on its specs or features. They don't even sell a device for device sake. They sell an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And when people are paying this hefty price, they are paying for that ecosystem, and they know that
Yeah.
they don't have to go anywhere outside this wall garden to get anything. So they are well served being in that garden, and Apple makes sure that there is no reason for them to go outside that walled garden, right? So trying to emulate, as you said, with the exact same thing would be a wrong move. And you can never
Right.
get that integration that we talked about, hardware, software, and content. So you are trying to beat Apple with their own strategy. It's very hard because they have all the background, the full ecosystem supporting it.
Yeah.
Trying to come up with a 3500 device from other parties without that full ecosystem support would be, I think, futile.
Yeah.
And I also think one way they could look at is, rather than just competing with Vision Pro with a single device, maybe identify the specific areas that
Yeah.
Apple is trying to focus,
Yeah.
and then try to come up with a better solution for that specific use case and the domains. For example, if it is content viewer, they already have a lot, most of the technology for a good content viewer headset, right? And there is going to be content available through Apple, or the enablement of ecosystem app developers and content developers through Apple. Maybe have a excellent, well priced content viewer for that market,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then specific industries they're looking at, maybe have a well optimized headset for that market, and compete not one on one across the board, but in those specific markets. I think that is a better strategy that will suit them, because this is like a all in one kind of a device, right? It's XR, it's not only RVR, but it's both consumer and a enterprise device. Sometimes the needs of these specific industries and specific markets might be different, and try to address those and come up at a better price point with similar experience for those specific markets. I think that will be a better strategy in my view. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe one low hanging fruit that people can or other players can pursue is getting that the 3D spatial camera, and building a play on citizen creator content. You know, that's one area where they might be able to start to challenge or emulate
Mm.
the Apple strategy. I think that's a powerful aspect of what I believe Apple is doing. Straight off the bat, that's the thing that I also think is really valuable. Especially for people who have families who live overseas or what have you, where you don't get to see family members frequently. It could be something that people are willing to throw down quite a significant amount of money, because the alternative is buying a plane ticket. Right.
Yeah, yeah, true. So again, I think we discussed this, but so the repeat of Apple versus Android ecosystem in XR, that I don't think would be a right solution, right, for people to compete. Even there, I mean, Apple is winning in the premium hands down, right? So
But you know what? I think people will fast and in probably most cases slow follow. It'll take a while for a fragmented ecosystem to follow what Apple's doing,
mhm,
especially with the impact that Apple will probably have.
mhm,
And this is coming from someone who really wasn't impressed with the device in the announcement in the beginning, right?
yeah,
So I've had to chew on a lot of stuff and think through and analyze a lot of stuff before actually, appreciating maybe a potential big picture move here by Apple. And if this is again a theory, I don't even know if they're really intending to do this, but if they do,
Yeah.
this is exactly what I have been saying would be the game changing play. Again, the thing that I didn't expect, the 3D spatial camera. I think that is it's a key feature,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
and that might actually be the killer function.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll keep the jury out on that one. So we'll probably discuss that down the line once they come to it. And yeah, interesting. But it's interesting comment. I agree. Okay.
Yeah, it depends on how good it is, right?
I mean, there are 360-degree VR cameras out, but doing it in a holistic way, I don't think there's anything out there right now. Okay, cool. We almost spent more than half hour discussing this, and we can go on and on for a very long time, right? So, any closing comments?
Sure. I guess in closing, I initially wasn't very impressed with the announcement.
Mm-hmm.
Price point didn't bother me much, given what they packed into the Vision Pro. But I think what the key takeaway for me is the bigger picture potential here, because the devices has never been answer, and it's always been content and compelling content that's going to engage folks and not render a device like a Vision Pro, like most drones that are sitting in drawers that people purchased for themselves, thinking that they're going to fly drones all the time, and they never end up doing it, right?
Yeah,
So
cool.
yeah,
Yeah, some of the couple of comments, closing comments from my side. Yeah, I think it's impressive, and even at this price point, I think there'll still people will be interested in buying, and whoever will buy it will find right away use cases when they get it, so that they don't think like it is money
no,
not well spent. They'll see uses, and we all know there are tons of Apple fanboys with deep pockets ready to spend on this. So I still say
yeah.
that people buy this, and I fully agree with you. This will
Oh
kind of
yeah,
has uprooted the industry and
yeah,
will change in significant ways. All the existing players have to go back to board and then
yeah,
rethink about strategy and how to address it. And I also agree with you that emulating Apple may not be the best solution. But instead, my suggestion would be to not a positive connotation, but killing by 1,000 cuts, right? So instead of just attacking with one exactly same device, maybe they look at different use cases and markets and then come up with even more optimized offering for those and try to compete with Apple in that way.
yeah.
Very well, man. Thank you very much. It was interesting conversation. I think we should do this more often.
Yeah, I'm always happy to jump on your podcast, Prakash.
Perfect.
Anytime, right? Great stuff. Great stuff.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much for coming over to Tantra's Mantra, Leonard, and sharing your views and engage in an interesting conversation. It is still very early for the industry and for Vision Pro itself. It will be at least a year or more before we see this in users' hands and the experience and see the worth of the money they have paid for it. So we'll see how things turn out, and I'm sure we'll keep discussing on this, and we'll have another session on this on Tantra's Mantra. So, folks, that's all for now. Hope you found this discussion informative and useful. If so, please hit like and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening this on. Don't forget to check the articles post on our website, tantraanalyst.com, and other podcasts. I'll be back very soon with another episode, putting light on another interesting tech subject. Bye bye for now.